Controversies are an ever-pervasive pastime in just about every form of media, stemming from actual issues from those behind the scenes or even elements within the respective show, game, movie, performance, or even literature, or being insinuated problems that attempt to balloon into something that was never there in the first place. Hell, it is a human condition to find problems in something and just about everything just to kill boredom or assume the worst in their fellow man, especially in this technological age where everything online is geared towards algorithms designed to piss you off and piss off the largest pool of people possible in order to generate those lucrative clicks. The Left 4 Dead series is no stranger to these strifes, with a few incidents that have occurred in its lifetime. While not very numerous, the diversity in these controversies that face the series are quite interesting to look back at, ranging from the iconic zombie hand of Left 4 Dead 2 to a ban in Germany and Australia.
I'm gonna report this to me Member of Parliament. Hey, Gus! I got something to report to you!
The boycott over the sequel, the potential controversies over the Spitter's concept design, to accusations of racism of the zombie horde's depictions. There's some stuff to unpack and inspect, so let's get into it. Today, we are discussing every controversy in Left 4 Dead's history.
And now I'm telling you, you don't want to know.
We've discussed probably the largest controversy in Left 4 Dead's history before on the channel with my video, The Time Left 4 Dead 2 Was Boycotted and Why It Happened. But to summarize, you could go check out the video if you want, the controversy wholeheartedly stemmed from Left 4 Dead 2 being announced just half a year after the first game was released. While Valve stated it was largely due to the fact that Left 4 Dead was made so rapidly with a plethora of technical issues that updating and fixing the coding was just not feasible, and doing so would have been a nightmare for development. To make the game a largely non-buggy mess like the eternal mess that is Dead by Daylight, Valve elected to make the sequel as a rebuild to give it a stronger foundation and implement all the ideas and concepts they wanted to put in Left 4 Dead 1 that would just not have worked adding into the first game, like new specials, weapons, attachments, and so on. If you want to see what was added and what was not during the 1-year development cycle, check out my upcoming video next month on Left 4 Dead 2 What Could Have Been, or check out what Left 4 Dead would have been like in my previous 70-minute long deep dive into that. But in the reality of everything, these details were not publicly available because it's a whole non-disclosure agreement thing to prevent leaks in media frenzies, where even Microsoft gave the Left 4 Dead 2 name the codename Carnation to avoid these issues. But when Left 4 Dead 2 was announced in June of 2009, people were shocked, surprised, and some pissed the fuck off. It was largely unheard of for a studio like Valve to release a sequel just a year after the first, especially when so many interviews, developer statements, and blog posts had promised that Left 4 Dead would receive continuous updates for years to come. Many thought Valve was entering a new dark age in their company's history, beginning to emulate the infamous dev cycle of EA when it came to churning out Call of Duty entries every single year to maximize those profits. People were up in arms. They were back for blood. They were ready to make Earthfall. You would think it was a World War Z-ing as how betrayed they felt. It was a rally to ensure Left 4 Dead would not be forgotten, that the consumer wouldn't be milked for yet another $60, to make sure the company they love so much would be let known that they cannot fall down this rabbit hole of corporate greed. That is, until Gabe Newell said fuck it and flew 2 heads of the boycott down to Valve headquarters to try it out and shut them up, showing them why a sequel was mandated and how it will be leagues better. The boycott's leaders Walking Target and Agent of Chaos were largely happy with what they saw, but for many it was still a slap in the face to them, the hardcore Left 4 Dead fans. The 2 leaders were obviously sellouts, while Gabe Newell would go on to say years later that those within the Steam Left 4 Dead 2 boycott groups would be pre-ordering Left 4 Dead 2 more than any other demographic, some would stick to their guns for years after the fact. Some would even go as far to say that they felt so betrayed that they would not even buy the game when it was $2 on Steam sales or even on free weekends. That is how dedicated to their cause there were. Some people are nothing if not sticking to their principles. No matter how stubborn and inconsequential they may be, I suppose the boycott worked considering Left 4 Dead 3 never happened. But hey, that new 4-player co-op shooter being headed by Left 4 Dead creator and head designer Mike Booth in conjunction with J.J. Abrams' studio Bad Robot sounds very promising. Now, simmering down from all of that festering hate that came from the boycott, we gotta hand it to those in the United Kingdom. Get it? Hand. Sometimes visual depictions just need to be flipped and given the finger, or two for that matter. Having the 4 fingers suddenly having to prominently be displayed was just too vulgar for England, Wales, and extremely ironically, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Having 2 fingers up in this V sign way, where the palm is facing inward towards the signer, is seen as an act of utter defiance. Basically, think of the middle finger, but more designed as opposition towards authority, despite the sign being pointed outward meant victory and or peace commonly around the world. Hell, this V sign was such sketchy territory to even display in the same year that Left 4 Dead 2 was released, as on April 3rd, 2009, Scottish football players Barry Ferguson and Alan McGregor were banned from the national team for simply showing the 2-fingered salute on a bench after losing to Iceland. It was that offensive. So Valve saw all this and then simply flipped the hand around to this. It's a rather awkward front-facing what looks like a smaller hand. While I do have to admit I like the imagery of a hand given the peace symbol being 8 up, it still feels so wrong to alter the recognizable hand itself. That's not to say much though, as the iconic hand was actually a revision in of itself. Yeah, the original little 2-pointed hand finger thing, it was originally going to be grittier looking, but mostly the same. All except 2 more fingers would have been ripped off as if they were eaten, instead of just being simply folded back. For some odd reason, the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, or ESRB, saw this ratio of eaten fingers and then told Valve,
No!
I mean, it's awesome enough to be inked on my body, but one has to wonder why it's okay to have the thumb chewed off, but having the pinky and ring finger torn off is just too graphic and out of the question? I guess that's just a finger too far. Maybe the ESRB is racist against thumbs, saying, "You ain't a real finger, you're a damn thumb."
That nigga is guilty!
Speaking of racism, Left 4 Dead 2, shortly after its announcement trailer, faced a singular backlash for its portrayal of what was described as several black zombies. Don't get me wrong, racism is an ongoing issue, but finding racism where none exists is just crazy. All stemming from a blog post for the Houston Chronicle titled "Racism in Video Games: The New Norm," where writer Willie Jefferson went on a rant about the gaming industry taking shots at games like the Call of Juarez for its portrayal of playing as a Confederate soldier, Resident Evil 5's depiction of Africa and its people, and of course, Left 4 Dead 2, where Jefferson would state this: "I am disturbed by the growing trend of racist undertones that are cropping up in video games. One of the games that comes to mind is Left 4 Dead 2. Set in New Orleans, players will have to fight their way through hordes of zombies, with several of them who appeared to be African Americans. When I saw the first trailer for the game, all I could think about was Hurricane Katrina and the aftermath." Later on in the article, Jefferson would go on to say this: "Setting the game in a city of New Orleans that was a scene of dead, bloated bodies floating by so soon afterward was a bad call." Of course, Hurricane Katrina occurring in August of 2005 was still somewhat fresh on the minds of people, and its ramifications even close to 4 years later. But going as far to say that including black zombies in a zombie horde shooter, including people of all creeds, is a form of racism for being portrayed in New Orleans is just plain wrong, especially when you are playing as the characters of Rochelle and Coach. Chet Falasek was even approached by Destructoid's Jim Sterling for a response to these allegations, with Chet having this to say: "It's utter insanity. There are all different races of zombies that you shoot, and since we placed it in New Orleans, that makes it racist." I honestly reread that paragraph about 5 times. But when 2 of the characters in your game are African American, it's a weird thing to be accused of. We're like, how does this work? Chet would also deny anything Jefferson had remarked about cheapening the struggles of families affected by Hurricane Katrina. Simply because a tragedy occurred in a major city does not permanently negate it from being given the spotlight for a horror game. Chet would fire back on these comments with this response: "As far as Katrina goes, if you go down to New Orleans, Katrina is still going on. I mean, it is messed up. It is crazy that the city is still in the state that it's in, and we treat that with the utmost respect. Our CETA thing is not some subversive commentary on anything. This is a video game. Those are real people's lives. We are not trying to make a statement with that. It is a place of love. It's dear to our hearts. We would not cheapen it. It's not a brick-for-brick representation of New Orleans. It's a fictional version, and I love that city." Saying that Hurricane Katrina was never envisioned in the messaging or portrayal of the city, that only the utmost respect was regarded for the township. Funnily enough, the campaign Hard Rain, right before getting to the parish, where it is set entirely within the city of New Orleans, do the survivors have to get through a nasty storm, but they are nowhere near that. Such occurrences do happen in the southern coast of the United States. That's just something that's a part of life. And it was not at New Orleans, just a small residential area near a sugar mill. Simply saying that because the trailer showed New Orleans in a ransacked state, as does typically happen with most, if not all, zombie outbreaks, and because New Orleans has a predominantly black population, that it must be racist to depict anything violent that's inherent in the zombie genre. It would imbue some irony into this controversy, though, that Jefferson would say that having to kill a black zombie in question is racist. It would also mean killing infected or any other creed would just be the same. It's for equality's sake to say that all people are welcome into the green flu's influence. Doing otherwise would say the virus only targets people of certain skin colors, and in doing so, you're kind of making worse implications for this fictional virus. It's in the best interest for everyone just to portray these cities for a fun story and to include everyone as is without thinking of a bigger picture. Hell, the best character in the series, and the one that narrates the very trailer that this whole controversy centered around, was Coach. And in that trailer, he simply is a religious man facing inner turmoil about the world around him falling apart and needing to
pray harder
before banding together with a black woman and 2 white men to fight and survive together. What could be better? Hell, Left 4 Dead 2 even avoided mentioning skin color in their 4 survivors' thousands of lines of dialogue and just had them talk, bitch, cooperate, and mingle with one another like normal people, not bringing up skin color or race in any way. Although Nick would
Hey, Lab Girl, Hayseed, tons of fun.
Call Coach fat, Rochelle loud, and Ellis an inbred redneck. And what could be less racist than that? No need to ban the characters and the zombies for that. On the topic of bans though, Germany and Australia were quick to censoring or almost outright banning Left 4 Dead 2. When it comes to ratings and what's allowed in video games in these respective countries, the sheer amount of violence had them quickly labeled and effectively banned, with a lot of red tape surrounding acquiring the games or how they were presented to German and Australian audiences. For the Aussies, the Office of Film and Literature Classification, or the OFLC, the down under variant of the ESRB, flat out would not give a rating to Left 4 Dead 2, describing its gameplay as realistic, frenetic, and unrelenting violence. And without a rating, the game was not allowed to be sold by any country retailers. Ironically, the first game, Left 4 Dead 1, had received the highest rating of MA 15+ just the year prior, so being refused seemed so out of left field. Although it could be noted that Valve themselves had prided themselves in the developer commentary on the enhanced gore system that was leagues better than Left 4 Dead 1.
Since players spend the vast majority of their time shooting the common infected, we wanted to improve the feedback and visceral nature of this experience. In Left 4 Dead 1 we provided only the ability to shoot off limbs. Now, in Left 4 Dead 2, there are 43 unique ways to damage an infected. Because many of these wounds are non-fatal, players are able to wound an infected more than once, resulting in about 780 possible damage combinations.
Talking about how the gore was so much better and more expressive. So, despite Doug Lombardi and Gabe Newell both being blown away by the refusal, they should have at least worn that as a badge of honor for how much they improved that mechanic in their game, emphasizing the prior controversy of the sequel Boycott, with news of Australia banning their game on October 22nd, just a few weeks before release. Some sacrifices had to be made. To make this deadline with a lot less flags for the OFLC to strike it down rapidly, Valve heavily censored the game for their appeal, removing all notions of decapitation, dismemberment, wound detail, or piles of dead bodies on the map. While this censored version would be what was released at launch to all Australian consumers, Valve and even EA pushed for the full uncensored version. They wanted this to be shown to everybody for what it was. But this would not come to pass as Parliament and review boards found it all to be still too gruesome, giving the final verdict that Valve gave insufficient delineation between the depiction of zombie characters and the human figures. In layman's terms, zombies were too human-like in appearance for all that gore and violence to be okay to display to gamers of all ages. It wouldn't be until changes in leadership in Australian Parliament and consistent campaigning and lobbying that the full uncensored version of Left 4 Dead 2 would be released 5 years later in 2014, when it would be bumped up to the new R18+ rating, and giving OG players that had to deal with the censored version all this time a free DLC update to get the full gory game they should have had all that time. In Germany, the Unterhaltung Software I'm not even going to try and pronounce that one, but it's the German equivalent of the ESRB, was not happy with just the censoring of all the blood and guts of the game. The international version's display of gratuitous violence was indexed by the Federal Department for Media Harmful to Young Persons in December of 2009, wherein sellers were not allowed to sell or advertise the game to underage youth. All physical PC copies of Left 4 Dead 2 out in the wild were confiscated in Berlin due to the game's nature of having a cynical attitude at killing hundreds of people and doing so in a highly graphic manner. Valve at least helped a brother out and made it where both Australia and Germany at least got repurposed Counter-Strike weapons that only they could have due to the censorship issues. Also, the parish campaign's Uncommon Infected of the Riot Police had to be completely omitted from the German copies and in turn the Australian copies because German laws prohibit depicting violence against authority figures in any way, shape, or form. Even if those figures are mindless zombies, it still cannot be displayed. It's very important and even funny to note with this that the Riot Infected would be restored as well as the uncensored version of the game in 2014 with the ratings changes. However, the Riot Infected would have the word security stripped from their armor. Now, it is important to note this, that in the Prima official strategy guide for Left 4 Dead 2 would say that these guys were never riot police, but instead were just employees hired by a private security company and were never affiliated to any local law enforcement or any other governmental organizations. So these authority figures that Germany saw were, and always have been, just more souped up mall cops. In 2021, when Australia and Germany reclassified and allowed the uncensored version of the game to be widely available, the security tag was put back on their armor for everyone to enjoy. So it looks like for this kind of censorship, you either got to deal with it or wait 5 to 12 years for your country to change its mind on the gore, apparel, and more. Now, these are some of the major controversies faced by Valve and the game against the world, but there was potential for a big controversy in the form of the newer Special Infected, specifically the Spitter. The team wanted to make a playable Special Infected that was exclusively female, one with the ability to lob large volumes of highly corrosive stomach acid at survivors to do damage. And where else would these large volumes of corrosive materials be made and stored in a heavily mutated human body? The tummy wummy, of course. But with that came a large issue, since this came in the form of a female infected. While her iterations and concept will be explored in depth in what Left 4 Dead 2 could have been, you can see here how differently she would have been throughout the conceptual phase. A throat goat zombie trad wife, an Asian female boomer in just underwear and stubs for arms, and what the fuck? Even this disgusting abomination of ripped limbs and literal shit coming out of her butt. But the one that stuck out even in articles about Left 4 Dead 2's upcoming release and discussions on new infected that were going to be a part of it was this image of her here.
Girlfriend ain't had periods since she got pre-gat.
This one in particular was blatantly obvious what would be the butt of a joke and instantly discernible for some people to take issue with or crack jokes about.
Pregnant?
That bitch looked pregnant. I said before that anatomically it made sense for her to have this bloated, near beer belly-like appearance as a place for her highly volatile and mutated body to store her high volumes of constantly produced stomach acid. But apparently during playtesting, Valve took note quickly of how players were referring to her as pregnant or giving her nicknames based on that nomenclature. The idea of having to shoot what the wider population would assume is a pregnant woman was obviously going to be a problem if this ever met retail release. It would have been really bad, especially in the 2009 era where edgy and dark humor were pretty damn widespread. So abortion jokes and overhearing teenage sons yelling out to kill the prego would have been heard quite a lot. I mean, we made masturbating jokes about the Charger, so that definitely would have been the case for a pregnant looking Spitter. So Valve went back with a rolling pin and flattened her stomach out. And to make sure it stayed in line with her biological lore, made her stomach sag quite a bit to at least make it seem like stomach acid was being still rapidly produced in her body. While some would still take issue with how the singular female exclusive Special Infected would wear such promiscuous clothes with a pink thong stretching way up from her butt crack, her design stayed as it was today. Although one key feature of the design was removed, as the Spitter apparently originally had writer/developer Chet Falisek's name as a tramp stamp on her lower backside, as you can see here. So, Chet, what you trying to tell us, huh, buddy?
Spitter actually had a tramp stamp for a little bit. That was my name. That was my wife. I was like, what do you say about her?
Are you a hitter for the Spitter?
But actually, Gabe tapped me. I was like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I know. We should remove that because it's not cool to call people out. Everybody's equal. Because they are. Like, everybody contributed. Everybody on that team was amazing.
Now, while there have been minor scuffles in Left 4 Dead history, like stuff surrounding how people thought the Last Stand update in 2020 should have gone, or stuff around that, or the community in the game being extra toxic, I mean, getting vote kicked for doing the wrong thing as an infected, or, just being a teammate. But what video game or any community in general is not toxic? That's just human nature. But what are some controversies throughout Left 4 Dead's history that you remember? Did I get something wrong? Let me know down below. Let's have a discussion in the comments. That's about it for today. Donators are here if you go to my Patreon or become a YouTube channel member or donate during my live streams for this inclusive list here. And if you donate on the Patreon, you can see my videos up to a week early. Use my code WOW at GamerSupps for 10% off your order, and check out my Left 4 Dead merch of the Chibi Survivors below this video at teespring.com. Until next time, I'm Zach S, aka WowSuch Gaming. Never forget to stay happy, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay wow.